thread. So like if this is my applique that I'm quilting down later, I don't want to have thread sticking out here on the edge that I have to try to tuck in when I'm appliquing that down. Burying your threads now makes everything nice and tidy. So now along this edge here where the two sides come together, I'm just going to grab a couple threads from each side. I'm not going through the paper, I'm just grabbing the fabric. And I'm going to do 3 stitches in place. That was 1, this is 2, and on my 3rd stitch, thank you Kim and Nisha, I go through the loop and I make a knot. Now 3 stitches in place will generally get you a knot somewhere along there anyway, but I like going through that loop. It makes me feel extra secure that there's a knot there. And I didn't tie a knot in my thread and try to bury it, because a knot is 1 point of security. And when you just have 1 point of security, if your thread breaks anywhere after that knot, your whole seam will now unravel. But 3 stitches in place is a lot more secure than that one single little knot that's trying to hold the tension from the thread all the way along. So I feel like 3 stitches in place is more like an anchor, whereas a knot is just kind of like tying yourself loosely to the dock. And I feel like an anchor is a lot more secure. But if you're someone who actually has more nautical experience than me, which is basically any nautical experience at all, I might be wrong, and you can go ahead and tell me in the comments. So this is called a whip stitch. I'm just going through just the fabric, not the paper, and I'm feeling the needle, you'll feel the edge of the paper. And as you do this a lot, let me see, here's a good example of a paper. The edge of this paper becomes like almost perforated along the edge, looking from where your needle just kind of like taps against it, but you're not going through it. Okay. And once you get to the end, we're going to do 3 stitches in place to give ourselves a nice anchor at the end of our seam. So it's 1, 2, and 3. And there we go. We have these stitched together. And if I bring it up really close, like you can't see the seam. It's hidden. The tiny thread and the tiny little stitches just hides it all. Okay. So now we're going to stitch on another piece. We're going to start with 3 stitches in place, stitch all the way across, and then do 3 stitches in place. I stitched all the way across, and then I went ahead and went into this channel again to just carry my thread back over to my next starting point, because I have this piece attached here, this piece attached here, and now I need to attach these 2 pieces together. So instead of having a loop on the outside, I just wanted to bury that thread. It just makes the back a little neater, less likely to catch that loop on something because it's hidden underneath the seam allowance. And now I'm going to just fold this, and if this, so I find especially as my hands get tired, having this and having to hold this like this, it's tension on my hands, and over time that can be tiring. So feel free to just go ahead and just completely fold your papers in half. You can cut as many more papers as you want with your Accuquilt Go EPP cube, so it's fine. You will get more junk mail in the mail, so you'll have plenty of papers to be able to cut. If you don't get junk mail for whatever reason, go ahead and brag about that in the comments. Cardstock, huge 100 pack, 200 pack of cardstock is not a lot of money. So don't worry about your papers. I would much rather save my hand than save the papers, and feel free to just fold the papers out of the way. Okay, so I created my anchor with my 3 stitches and through the loop, and now I'm going to do the same thing, stitching all the way down. Now I don't think I told you how far apart my stitches are. They're a little bit bigger than 1/8 of an inch. Oh no, they're probably about 1/8 of an inch. Somewhere between a 1/16 and 1/8, depending on the project that I'm working on and how quick I'm trying to do it. But really over time I've just kind of gotten a rhythm of about how big my stitches are, and my stitches get pretty even, somewhere between a 1/16 and 1/8 of an inch between the stitches. You get to the end, do your 3 stitches in place, and the last one you go through the loop, and that gives you your anchor. Ooh, okay, so I have 3 hexagons put together, and now I want to add more hexagons out around the outside. So my general rule is if I only have to go 2 sides to get to a new spot, I go through the back underneath the seam allowances. So that's 1 and that's 2. If it's more than 2 sides, then I just go 1 and then clip my thread and then wherever I need to go to start. So now I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to English paper piece all the way around, adding on these other hexagons until I have a nice fun little flower. So here we go. I've finished up my hexy flower and it is super cute. I can now answer one of the big questions that I get when doing English paper piecing, which is, do the papers stay in? And as I've told you, we reuse the papers, which tells you that yes, we do take them out. Once you have a hexagon surrounded on all sides, or so in this example, I have diamonds, so a diamond surrounded by on all sides, you can take out the papers. So you can see here that all of my papers here on the edges are still in place, but all these papers that are not on an edge, I've been able to remove those already. So I can do the same thing here on my hexy flower, and I just kind of peel back the seam allowance, no big deal. And depending on how much glue you've used, it might be a little easier or harder. And then if you have a crochet hook, you can pop it into that hole and then just pop it out. If you're worried about these seam allowances at all, if they bug you, that they kind of stick up, you can always use a little dot of glue to just push them down. And later on, when you're all done, you're going to take out all the papers. So for example, if I was going to applique this down, now I can take out the rest of my papers before appliquing it down. And I'll want to iron all these seams smooth so that they're not in the way before I applique this onto a project. So if this was going to be an applique that I was going to put on an apron or a backpack, I could now take out the rest of these hexagons, and I would just want to make sure that I keep those folds so I have all my edges tucked under for my applique. In this case though, I'm going to go ahead and add some diamonds because I want to show you what it's like adding multiple shapes. The same would be for half hexagons or for triangles. So for example, let's say that I wanted to put this half hexagon here. You just line up your edges, right sides together, and stitch it in place. And that's what's really great about these Accuquilt Go cubes, is that all of the pieces are 1 inch. So the sides are always going to match up. The only exception would be, of course, this half hexagon, because this long side, it's not going to match up with anything except it matches up best with another half hexagon. But it's also the equivalent of 3 triangles, so it could match up with diamonds like this, or you could put 3 triangles. So it'll still match up because this center line is 2 inches. So, but this long side obviously won't match up with a short side. Anyway, so let's go ahead and add a diamond, because I can add diamonds all the way around here, and now this hexy flower just becomes a 3-inch hexagon. So I'm going to put this right sides together. And just like before, I want to bury my tails of my thread in the seam allowance between the paper and the fabric. And depending on how experienced you are, you may want to start in the middle and go out. So that way, if you have any points that don't fit exactly right, you can kind of fudge those more on the outside. That's usually a little easier. I've been doing this long enough, and I actually prefer at this point just being able to stitch both seams one after the other. But that's going to be a choice based on your experience and what you prefer. There is no wrong way to, or wrong order, I should say, to stitch these sides. Now you can, I don't know how well you can see this on the video, but it looks like, because of just the way things are lined up, that this diamond is actually a little bit shorter than the hexagon side, which means that things might not line up perfectly here at the corner. If you ever come into a situation where you've got one side that's a little longer than the other, which just happens with the way fabric is folded, all you have to do is curve like this so that the shorter pieces on the inside and the bigger pieces on the outside, and see how that magically, when you curve, what it does is it eases that bigger side around that smaller side, and you're just going to stitch it with a curve right in there. And what that'll do is it'll ease those two together. It's kind of the equivalent of when you're sewing on your sewing machine and you've got two blocks that are just not quite the same size, so you kind of stretch one a little bit so that it fits the smaller one. That's basically what we're doing here. We're kind of stretching that bigger one around the smaller one, so that you don't have a pucker at the end. And then when you get to your corner, obviously 3 stitches in place, and put your needle through the last one. So I'm going to flip this open, and you can see, you can't tell that there was any easing in this piece at all. It's totally fine. So now, just like before, when I was trying to put 2 hexagons together, or the third hexagon together, you can just fold this out of the way. You can absolutely put a crease in the paper if you want. It's up to you. Putting creases in the paper wears them out a little faster, but with the Go Cube, you just cut yourself some more. No big deal. And there we go. Now I've got that diamond stitched right on there. And I can do the same on the other 5 sides and add some more diamonds to turn this hexy flower into a larger hexagon. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure that you check that description box for links to my patterns, as well as links to the different products that are used. I really appreciate it when you click on my affiliate links. It gives me a little bit of revenue that helps support this site. Make sure you've given this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. That lets me know that you like this video, and it lets YouTube know that they should show this video to more people as well. If you have any questions or comments, leave those in the comment box, and I will be sure to look for your comments. And make sure you're subscribed to this channel. This is the 3rd in my series of Accuquilt Go English paper piecing videos, but I have lots more videos planned for you, and you don't want to miss out. Hit subscribe and then that bell so you're the first to know when I have a new video for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you right here real soon.